fact, he has a PhD in physics from the University of Cambridge. He has several patents and a successful spin-off company that went through an IPO. He has experienced the influence that comes with deep subject matter expertise. When he started his professional career, though, he quickly reached a tipping point. He discovered that expertise, sometimes it's overrated, and there are other factors that determine success. Joseph studied what these factors are, and he now helps organizations leverage those factors so that they can gain impact, influence, and innovation. Joseph has given keynotes and training programs in over 30 countries on 6 continents, as well as on the TEDx stage and in front of 100,000 people. And on rare occasions, even his teenage children listen to him. Please join me in welcoming Joseph to the stage.
Thank you very much. You've just had lunch. We're at the end of a conference, and that means we need to start this with an activity. Would you all please rise? On an energy level from 1 to 10, how would you assess the energy that's in the room at the moment? Just shout it out. 2, 5, 1, anyone 0? 0, thank you very much. It was on the low side. On that energy level, we're not going to bring anything home. We're not going to drive any influence, or we're not going to drive any innovation. So we are going to try this again. Would you please be seated? And on an energy level of 10, would you please rise? Wow, folks, that was it. Thank you very much. You can sit down again. That was wonderful. I need to start this really at my own beginning so that you have a sense where I'm coming from. In case you haven't picked this up yet, ta-da! Big mistake on the slide. Who sees the mistake on that slide? California license plate, the car, right? It's not my car, in my excuse. I saw this car on the road somewhere, but I thought, I'm going to put all my PowerPoint skills into practice here, and we'll make the magic fix. Isn't that greatly improved now? Now, I need to give you a caveat about me being here in front of you, the German speaker, in front of the American audience. So a couple of things you need to know about me. Number one, this is my high school photo, and more importantly than the photo is the caption that I put next to it in the yearbook. Here's the caption. You're not supposed to laugh at this point. Your empathy is the rule of the day at the moment. But this is unfortunately the German motto, at least sometimes it seems that way. And it is also the motto of folks who have a lot of expertise. Because when we have expertise, when we know things, when we think we have great ideas, sometimes we come with this attitude of, I want to be right. I want to get my ideas across. And that's not always helpful. So, second caveat about me being the German speaker here is this one here, something I picked up at an airport. When I turned 40, my wife gave me a book as a birthday gift. It was a really, really thick book. It was entitled 1000 Years of German Humor. I opened the book to discover that all the pages were blank. I didn't get that joke. I spoke to some of you, I've shared with some of you that I'm divorced at this point. That's a different keynote, that's the change management keynote, so I'm not going into that. But that's just the background that I bring to this. What we want to talk about is how we take something from this conference and turn it into action. What needs to happen to take our learning and bring it home to our workplace? And in order to address this, we're going to start with an experiment. We are all going to do a brain experiment now, a mental test. Here's how this is going to work. There is a football game about to be finished. There is 10 seconds left on the clock. I'm going to start a video in a moment, and it will run for 10 seconds. During those 10 seconds, there will be footballs flying from left to right, right to left. They fly all over the place. And what I want you to do is tell me afterwards how many footballs there were flying across the football field. Really easy, okay? Everyone ready for that? Say, I'm ready. Ready. Very good. Now, who of you, by a show of hands, figured out that you did not have to count the footballs? About 25%. The others are wondering now what in the heck is going on here, probably. The others counted the footballs, I assume. Can you shout out, those of you who counted them, so not those who stopped counting for whatever reason, those of you who counted it, shout out how many you counted. 23, 28, 27, 26, okay. 30 even, okay, got it. 1. You think this is a trick question, right? You think it's the same one flying back and forth, like one of these North Korean parades probably, right, where they have the folks moving around. So, those of you who didn't count it, how many do you think there were? 27. Wow, everyone said 27, fantastic. And the reason they found it out without counting is because the number was on the board. Let me play this video for you again. I'm going to play this video again, and this time, please watch the board. Now, just to dispel any kind of suspicion here, can I just hear those who saw it the first time confirm that this is the same video? Yes. Same video, right? Thank you very much. Same video. Very cool. So what do we take from this? What does this mean for us? It means that when we have any given task, whatever that task is, we put our focus somewhere. Our focus is somewhere. And for many of us, the focus was on these balls flying back and forth here. And only when you're able to take that focus off, when you're able to let go of that laser focus, are you able to see something different. That's when you start seeing different things. And that is the key to bringing new things home, taking things with you, and making sure that you apply whatever is useful. So we'll be talking a lot of the time about shifting our focus. What is needed in order to shift our focus so that we don't get stuck on something, so that we don't cling on to a particular solution, an idea that we're taking from here, but instead that we are open for more and are able to see that idea that we have in a broader context. So, several things that we need to do to shift our focus. Number one is to let go of habits that we have developed. Because these habits, they are really, really powerful, and they make us keep doing the same things again and again. I would like to demonstrate that for you. And on an energy level of 10, I would like all of you to rise again, please. Yeah! Very good. Very good. Now, if you could all do jazz hands, please. Pay attention to your neighbor. Don't hit your neighbor at this point. Very good. And now fold your hands, please. Very good. Jazz hands again. Fold your hands again, please. And now notice that one of your thumbs is up, is on top of the other one, right? Okay, jazz hands again. And now I would like you to fold your hands again with the other thumb up this time, please. How does it feel? Awkward, weird, right? Okay, let's do it again. And this time I would like you to fold your arms. Okay. Now take a quick look around how many ways there are to fold our arms. How many fingers you see one way or the other way, how many fingers are hidden, pointing, what direction, maybe. Quite a number of ways, right? Jazz hands again. And now I would like you to fold your arms the other way. You ready for this? Very good. Now. What's it like? You don't know how to do it, right? This was too complicated. You were talking about technology and stuff as well here. Not easy, right? Not easy. Many of us are really wondering what exactly does it mean to fold our arms the other way, and it doesn't feel right. True? That fair to say? Okay, please be seated again. The interesting thing about this is, if I had asked you before, is there a right way and a wrong way to fold hands or arms? You would have all said no. There is no right or wrong way. They're all equally valid and good ways to fold hands and arms. But to each one of us, there is exactly one right way of doing it, and everything else feels wrong. That's how it occurs to us. And that is true for pretty much anything we do. It's not just true for folding hands and arms, it's also true for everything we do in business. We have a certain way of doing it, we have a process, we have our own way of being, and if someone does something different, it just doesn't feel quite right. So the key for us is to shift that focus away from what it feels like to us and be open to the fact that there might be other ways of doing it. That means, and that's my encouragement to you now, when you go back with the solutions, the ideas, the great suggestions that you've picked up here, be open to the fact that there may be other ideas out there as well. Maybe you really have the great one, and at the same time be open to what other people are saying there. That's one shift I would like you to make. Shift over to being uncomfortable with something. Let go of the need to feel comfortable and completely at peace with everything. Next shift, and now we're talking a bit about technology. If we look at a company, or an industry maybe even, that has a growth chart like this, that looks pretty positive for an industry. I know there is no timeline attached to it, but nonetheless, there is continuous growth. That looks pretty neat. If you were in that industry, you might feel okay with that chart. If that's all the information we have, looks reasonably decent. If I told you that each of these markers at the bottom on the timeline is 10 years, so it's a total of about 40 years, that looks even better because we're looking at an industry that has been growing over the last 40 years, so for a really impressive time, and the growth is just under 3% per year when you work that out. So pretty impressive industry. Now, if I told you that this is the industry of the horse breeders at the turn of the 19th century, we suddenly realize that there is more at play here. It's not just as good anymore, because we all know, of course, that at some point cars began showing up here, and they had an impact on these horse breeders. Not just on the horse breeders, but the entire industries that were connected with it. The saddle makers, the hotels that were exactly one day's horseback ride apart from each other. So there was a whole economy built on these horses. And all of that changed. If you had asked the horse breeders at that time, is there anything to be concerned about? What would they have said? No, right? Everything's perfect at the moment. Now today we're a bit more sensitive to disruption, and I know you've talked about many areas of disruption here at the conference, but nonetheless, even with that, just that information, this feels pretty comfortable. My children, my grandchildren can probably still live in that industry. And when I think of that, of these cars, when I think of what they are toys for the ultra-rich. They are something that only an engineer can drive. Women don't qualify anyway. So the market is really slim for that, right? The prediction in 1900 for the car market worldwide was 2,000 units. Turned out to be slightly wrong, because you know how that chart continues. The cars overtook the horses by far. And the interesting thing here is, the interesting thing about the timeline, and I want you to put this in perspective with the disruption that you've heard about here. The time it took from the peak of the horse breeding industry to the point where the cars overtook the horses, that time period was only 8 years. And that was 100 years ago. Today, that time period is no longer 8 years. That time period could have happened over the last 3 days, depending on what that disruption is. Now the question is, what can we do to to identify those things, because there are many other areas where something sprawls up. We think it is a disruption, or it might be something that's coming up. I'd be interested to hear from you here, from the different groups that we have, what some of the disruptions were that you have encountered, that you see are coming. I know that there are some folks from the radio industry here. Can I just have a show of hands from everyone from radios? What do you think might be disruptions that are coming your way? I'm sorry? Cars, connected cars, very good. TV folks, who's in the TV? What's coming for you? What are the disruptions that you see? Digital? Okay. Data, probably the way data plays a role. Those of you in the cable industry, can I have a show of hands from the cable folks? Okay. What do you think is coming? Subscription revenue, that's a disruption that's going to happen for you. How about newspapers? Who's with newspapers here? Okay. Many here at this table. What do you think is coming as a disruption?
More digital stuff.
More digital stuff, that's it for you. From the digital folks already, so you are the ones who are taking over. Can I just have a show of hands of the digital folks, if you still dare put your hand up at this point? You don't, or you're all gone. Gaming, who is in gaming? Also all gone. They're probably on the blue curve, right? That's why they're all gone. At the same time, something will also come for them. Something is coming. Now, how do we identify this? How do we figure out what this is? And the key is not to come with a preconceived mind that this is it. Because the horse breeders, they didn't know either. They would not have been able to predict this. The shift that we need to make is to go away from, I know it, I know what's going to happen, over to, I'm going to be curious. I'm going to pay attention. And that's the mindset in which I would like you to leave the conference. Not with the mindset of, I know everything now, I have all the solutions, I have the 5 ideas that I need to put into practice now. That's great, and there's nothing wrong with it. And at the same time, I want you to be open to the fact that there might be other things as well. Because otherwise, you're likely going to be tripped up. You might be getting attached to the ideas that you have, instead of really being committed to the success that your organization can bring. So that was the other shift, shifting our mindset from knowing the solution over to being curious and open to other things. Next shift is about how we show up when we come back from this conference. How do we show up to the folks who are back in our offices and who are waiting for us to hear what we have to tell them? And we're going to practice a little bit here, how we are going to show up for them. We're going to do a quick activity here, where we are going through an improv exercise, a word association. I'm going to say one word, and the next person will say whatever comes to their mind, and we're just going around the room. And just to make this short, I'm going to ask some of you to come on the stage, and you'll do it in front of the audience. I'm going to take a time out here and put you at peace. I'm not going to do it. I wanted to make that introduction because I want to know from you, who of you felt at least a little bit nervous at this point? Honest hands are going up. Thank you very much for the honesty here. Yeah. So we're getting triggered by that. We're getting a bit nervous about that kind of introduction. And why is that? Why do we get nervous when something like this comes? It's fascinating because all I ask you to do is be able to say one word. And we get triggered, we get frightened of that situation because either we think we're not able to come up with a word to say, how likely is that? Or you might be saying the one curse word that's been on your mind for the whole conference, and it's going to slip out in that moment. Or you might say something stupid. How likely is that with one word? So there really is no risk, right? But our mind makes up that risk in those situations, and that's what triggers us. That's what triggers our freeze, fight, or flight instinct, and it makes us get nervous, not want to do that. That's the catch. Now, if I had told you that there is this freeze, fight, or flight instinct, you would have all said, oh, I know it. I know of this, I know it happens, and I can manage it. The reality is, we don't know how easily we get triggered. And that can happen so quickly. So when you get back, you need to be aware that this trigger is kicking in for you because you are going to share something that is interesting. People are going to pay attention to you and you will get triggered as a response, and you need to be able to manage that trigger. You need to be able to get your adrenaline down again and be able to cope with it and handle that situation. The best folks who do that are folks in improv theater and jazz musicians. They're great at improvising. There are fantastic MRI studies that look at the functions of the brain and what is happening in the brain when they are in improv mode. And they were looking in the MRI studies if there is one particular part of the brain that gets active in that situation. Is there a part of the brain that allows us to improvise, to be fully present, to be really there? And the answer is there is not. But there is one part of the brain, the neofrontal cortex, that gets reduced in activity, that goes down. That's the part of our brain that self-monitors us. That's paying attention to, am I looking good? Am I saying the right thing? Am I smart enough? Or anything like that. And that gets toned down in those situations. And they're able to get that part of the brain to tone down. And that's what can be practiced. When you practice improvising, you're essentially able to take that self-monitoring down, and that is something we're going to practice here. Not the activity I just introduced, we're going to do a different one, and this time it's for real, no catch attached to it, and it's not going to be on the stage either, so you can be where you are at the moment. We are going to practice a conversation. And it's going to be a really simple conversation, like you go home. And I would like us to do this in either pairs or in groups of 3. If you end up being in a group of 3, that's fine as well. So if you could quickly find a partner or a group of 3 and see who that is that you have the conversation with, that would be great. Very good. And now, so I'm going to ask you, because we all have more energy when we stand, right? You agree with that? Very good. So if you would all please rise again. Okay. Now, what do you think I'm going to do next with you? I'm going to ask you to sit down again, because that was not the energy level of 10. We're going to do this again. So we're going to be here until 7 o'clock until this works with the energy level of 10. Okay, let's try it again. Would you please rise again? Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. Here is what I would like you to imagine now. You are at Starbucks, and you're in line at Starbucks. You have a conversation with someone else in the line, okay? So it's going to be a trivial conversation. Don't make it deep. It's just about something. And it goes back and forth quickly. So don't speak for 5 minutes. It really needs to go back and forth quickly as a conversational exchange. The one rule that you need to follow in this is the last word of the previous speaker has to become the first word of the next person. Whatever the last word was that the previous speaker said has to be your first word, exactly the same way this word was used, okay? I know this leads to funky sentence structures. It really does. And that's okay. That's what we're going to do now. Okay, I'm going to give you 30 seconds for this. Go. And wrap it up, please. Wrap it up, please, and give me your attention again. Wrap it up, please, and give me your attention, please. Very good. I would like to hear some comments. I would like to hear some comments how that went. What was your experience with this?
I need to be creative. It was tough to pick up something with a word and try to have it relate to the sentence previously.
Okay, so you try to make some meaning of it, you try to make it a rich conversation.
Yep.
Okay, very good, thank you. Let me get some more comments.
I messed up the first time because I didn't use the word as the first word of the sentence, but I did incorporate it in the next response.
And
I went off script, yeah. I'm known for that
that's a
anyway.
sneaky way out, right? Well done. And how did it feel for you?
Oh, it was fun.
Was fun? Very good. Can I get some more opinions?
That was great. It really did, though, get your, you can feel your emotions going when you were struggling.
You were struggling, right? Not easy because the sentence structures are a bit funky. Let me get some comments. Yeah. I keep the microphone.
Okay.
You're not getting the mic? No, no. I keep the microphone.
I was-
I'm the speaker.
I was going to say it was difficult because you really had to pay attention.
Yes. Did you hear that? You really had to pay attention, right? Active listening. You really had to pay attention. How is our listening normally? So how was the listening in this case here compared to our normal listening?
It felt very natural, actually.
Felt natural to you?
Yeah, to both of us. Yeah, we had fun with it.
Very good,
Yeah.
very good. How did it feel for others? Yep.
For me, very nice.
Very nice for you. How was the listening for you? Can I ask you? Yeah.
I think it was more intense. Like, you're really focused and staring at the other person.
You're really listening. You have to really listen intently, right? Yep. So typically, we don't listen that way. How do we normally listen? Normally, yeah, we wait till the second word and we connect to the second word, and the rest of what the person says doesn't matter anyway, right? Because we know what the person is going to say, and it's stupid anyway, and we don't care either. So most of the time, we don't listen that way. We listen until we know what we're going to say, and then we typically shut down. So that's the other shift I would like you to make in your listening, in the way you show up with someone. No matter what idea you take home with you, no matter what you want to implement, you are going to be more effective, not when you put yourself in the speaker role, in the one who's trying to convey that idea, but if you put yourself in a listener role to find opportunities in that person's world, and see where you can place that idea. So if you really want to have influence, if you want to have impact, if you want to drive something, it's important to find out why something is an opportunity for the other person. And the only way to find that out is through listening. So when you get back, listen until the last word drops. And that's when you start thinking about what you're going to say. That's not when you start speaking. Most of us start speaking well before that as well, right? That's when we start thinking about what we're going to say next. So that's the next shift, the way we listen. Okay, let's try something else, and that's something that will also occur in the conversations that we have, and that is the way how people exchange information, or how they create the conversation. We're going to be in the same pairs or groups of 3 again, okay? And we're going to have a different kind of conversation this time. We're going to create a fairy tale. And the way we are going to create the fairy tale is 1 word per person. I all want you to start with once upon a time. I do. Everyone starts with once upon a time. Can I get you to play this with me? Are you? So it goes back and forth with each word. So the way this would work is once,
Upon,
a,
time,
there, and then it, perfect, very good, thank you. Give a-
One word at a time.
Yeah, why don't you just say it again for everyone?
One word at a time.
Got it?
Good luck.
One, one word at a time. That works in pairs, it works in groups of 3. In groups of 3, you just go around the circle, right? And it's 1 word per person. Try and put some periods into the sentences. So don't make one sentence that runs for 2 minutes now. It is possible to end a sentence and start from fresh again. You don't have to say period. Thank you very much for You're a CPA, lawyer. Close, thank you. Very good. So you don't have to say the periods or the commas or anything like that. Very good. I'm going to give you 1 minute. Please rise and go. And come to an end, please. Come to an end in your fairy tale and give me your attention again. You're welcome to sit down. Thank you for shifting over.
I'll bring my
No,
notes
I
over.
just said thank you for shifting over. Yeah, perfect. Okay. Are you still going back and forth, or?
We pause.
Will you pause? Got it. I thought we had a chance to hear the death of a king here or something like that. Very good. I'm interested to hear from some of you again what it felt like to be in a conversation like this for you. Yep.
It felt collaborative. We had to take the first person's story, add our story, and hope it goes with the next person's story. So with 3 people, it was really great.
With 3 people, it was easier than 2, is that your sense? Or, yeah?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, very good. Other observations? Do you have one for me?
I didn't think it was all that hard.
Was not hard, okay. And that's fine, you know, there's nothing wrong. Any observations, anything?
He took all the easy words.
He took the, okay.
We're not good at fairy tales.
He took the easy words, okay. Okay, very good. Yep, coming over to you.
I think we were trying to anticipate what the other person was saying and how the story was going.
Very good, right? Did it work?
Yep.
Coming to you. Okay, did it work for you?
No, it didn't work for us. I was trying to think of what he would say, and he said something else,
And
so I had
something
to
different
adjust.
Okay, very good. Very good.
I was trying to build a story for him to follow.
Now, this gets 100 points for honesty here. Very good. Is it possible that our conversations are a little bit like this when we get home, right? It's not a word that we say a sentence or several sentences, and we still have the hope it goes exactly the way we would like this to go, right? What does it say about control in that conversation? How did it feel like for you about control that you had in that kind of dialogue? What was your experience there?
Well, sometimes he didn't say the word I wanted him to say.
Yep. It's your fault.
Always.
Good. So we have agreement in that group? Good. But that's really how it occurs to us, right? In that situation, it's pretty clear we don't have the control that we think we have, that we would like to have. And reality, we never have it. We also don't have it in a more elaborate conversation, even though it's a little bit more camouflaged in that conversation. Now, the shift that I suggest to you in a conversation is to really approach it, not with the mindset that we typically bring of, I know we're here and I want this conversation to go there, but really be open to creating that conversation in the dialogue. That means when you go home with all the ideas, with all the suggestions that you have, Don't expect that the conversation will start at a given point and it will land exactly where you would like it to land. Try and create it with that other person and acknowledge the fact that this other person can take it any way they want, it can take any shape or form, and then you arrive at a conclusion that works for both of you. That's really what you want to get out of this, to co-create the result of that conversation instead of trying to come with the mindset, I know a little bit more from the conference, I have some new ideas that we haven't seen yet, and I need to bring this over. Right? Of course you come with that intention, and you're much more successful if you allow the other person to take equal control of that process, of that conversation. So that was the next shift. Let's go for the next one. And the next one I need to introduce with the other activity. So I'm going to tell you a story in a moment, but before I tell you the story, I need us to do an outroduction. That's not an introduction, it's an outroduction at the end of the conference. Here is what I would like you to do. At your tables, outroduce yourself quickly by sharing your name, a takeaway from the conference, and something that your table mates don't know about you. Okay? That's all I want you to share. Really, really quick. I give you a total of 90 seconds for that, and the table has to be complete after 90 seconds. Go. Okay, I forgot something. My fault. Would you all please rise? Very good. That's fine. Yeah, just continue, that's fine. $15, $20. And if you could wrap it up, please. If you didn't complete it, that's fine. That's the way it is then. I'm sure you had a chance with 3 people at one table. Very good. If you could wrap it up, please, and be seated again. Wrap it up, please. I know you may not have finished it, and if I could ask you to wrap up your conversations, they are done. Can I ask you to finish as well? I know you may not be done, that's fine. Very good. Okay, very good. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. First, I want to tell you a story that I encountered, that I experienced at one of my first jobs. When I entered the professional world, I worked for the #1 company in Europe by revenue, the #1 company in Europe by number of employees, and quite possibly the #1 company by ego as well. That company was Mercedes-Benz, and I had a chance to work in their research strategy, joined the company at the same time as someone who became my closest friend. Andy is his name, and we worked at their corporate headquarters, which was newly built. The corporate headquarters had just opened when we joined the company, and it looked absolutely fabulous. Who of you has ever been to the corporate headquarters of a Fortune 100 company? A show of hands, many of you. Wow, many of you. Okay, cool. Even those who haven't been to one of those corporate headquarters, what do you imagine the atmosphere to be like? Just shout out some words that describe the atmosphere. What do you think it's like? Fun, modern, energy, grand. Thank you very much, grand. Pressure. Thank you very much. Okay. Sterile. That is true. Certainly at that time, right? I should add this. That was mid-end 90s approximately. Yep. What else? How else would you describe it? What do you think the people looked like that walked around the corridors? How do professional suits, right? All suits. Exactly. Dark suits, ties, and that also describes the fact that they were mostly men at that time, and it was a very professional environment. That's pretty much the atmosphere. And Andy and I, we didn't fit in there. We always wore colored suits because we thought we just have to stick out a little bit, and we have to try and do unusual things. And we put that into practice one day when the new CEO announced that he would do a communications event. This was what happened. The company also hired a new CEO, and he did something that is pretty typical for a CEO. He looks what happens in the company, tries to find out what is important, and then at some point comes up with a strategy that he wanted to put in place. That was the end of the 90s. That means the way he had to communicate the strategy was not through email, it was not through the internet or anything like that, just wasn't available. The communication tools that he could rely on were print media. The company had a newsletter, was called The Star, and he also relied on the communication cascade where the next reports would communicate it down. He started that communication cascade by inviting the top 100 leaders of the company to the corporate headquarters into the conference center. And Andy and I, we were right next to the conference center. So we had the ingenious idea, we are going to bust into that meeting. We knew that meeting was coming up, and on that morning, we decided we are going to wear dark suits, just to give us a little bit more credibility. And the morning of the meeting, we walked over to that conference center, which was the building here maybe, and we showed up at the entrance to it, and for the first time since we could remember, there were security guards there. They took one look at us and decided they don't belong to the top 100 leaders of the company. There was no need to say anything. They sent us away immediately. At that point, Andy and I were a little bit disappointed, but we knew the compound, right? We knew the layout of that corporate headquarters, and we knew that between the conference center here and an office tower that was a couple of 100 yards further down here, there was an underground corridor. And that underground corridor had an emergency exit right in the middle, and that exited into one of the gardens. And Annie and I had the idea to go into that emergency exit, walk down the stairs, be in that corridor pretty tight, right, just an emergency exit, walked over to the conference center, and as we tried to open the door, we noticed the door is locked. At that point, we were really ready to give up. We thought, we're not going to make this. And Andy and I, we looked at each other, we're ready to turn around, and in that moment, we saw the CEO coming from the other end of the corridor, together with a couple of his C-suite colleagues, plus 3 folks from his security detail, which looked, they looked big, and they came charging at us with a purpose in their stride that I had never seen before. It was, for us, a moment of truth. Spotlight on us. Our first wish was the ground should open and we would just disappear down. Anyone ever been in a situation like that where you feel best thing is the ground opens and you can just disappear? Yeah, got it. So at that moment we had to make a decision. We had to do something. And when I reflect to that situation now, I realized we had some choices, what we could do. And I'm going to tell you what these choices are that I see in hindsight now. I didn't think that clearly in that moment. Let me just make this clear. But the choices in hindsight are, I think, 4 choices, and I'm going to share them with you, and then I'm going to ask you what you would have done in that situation. And mind you, I'm not asking you what should you do in that situation, but realistically, you're in your mid-20s, you're meeting the CEO of the largest European company, and he is coming there along with a couple of his followers. What would you do in that situation? So let's take a look at the options. Option number 1, walk to the exit very fast, hope to get there before them and just go out there. And it would have meant running. I can tell you we would have had to run towards them and charge for that exit. That's option A. Option B, casually walk towards them, as if this is the most normal thing that happens every day. Tell them who we are and that we're interested to attend this meeting. And then see what unfolds. Option C, walk towards them, walk past them. Again, pretend like this is just a regular encounter that would happen on any given day, and hope that nothing happens. And D, stay at the door, fumble around the key card, the lock or the door, pretend like we're missing a key or so, as if we should be in there, and see that they let us in. Okay, now what would you have done? Not what should you have done, right? What would you have done? Who's in favor of A? Give me a right one over here, okay. Okay, I need to wait. I know the honest people need a moment to think about this. A, thank you very much for the honesty. It takes courage to admit A at this setting, I know that. It's easy to do this in hindsight, right? Okay, who's in favor of B? Who would have done B? Realistically would have done B. Okay, good number in the room, thank you very much. Who would have done C in that situation? About the same, maybe a bit more than B, okay. And who would have done D? Vehemently D, right? You're a D advocate there. Very good. Okay. Now, without any doubt in my mind, the best option, what do you think is the best option? B, right? B is the best option. It's the best option because it's honest, there is no deception in option B, it's fully transparent, and it has the possibility to lead to something, to a conversation, maybe even to get in there, maybe to a relationship with him. Something like that. Option D also has the benefit of possibly getting us in. That's a benefit, right? That's a plus in favor of option D. It's not quite as honest, though. There's a bit of deceit in that. And options A and C, they don't bear the chance to get into the meeting. We chose option C. We chickened out. Thank you. Thank you for making that even clearer. Appreciate that. So we walked towards them. We looked down on the floor. And to our amazement, we noticed they also started looking down on the floor. Why in the world they were embarrassed, I don't know until today. But nonetheless, C is what happened, and it missed the opportunity for a conversation. There was no opportunity for anything to develop as a consequence of that. And Andy left. And why do you think we chose C? What do you think was the driver for C for us? Fear, right? Thank you very much. Absolutely. We were just petrified in that moment. We were fully triggered. We were afraid of what might happen. And the thoughts that went through our mind is, of course, being fired immediately, possibly being shot by these security folks if we start running towards the... anything like that, right? That's the most likely outcome that occurred to us in that moment. And avoiding termination or death was sort of the objective that we have in that moment. But when we think of that realistically, that's just not happening. Right? We're just exaggerating the risk that is in that situation. It's just not happening. It's unlikely for that to come true. What was also in our way, in addition to us being fearful, what was also in our way was the focus that we brought to that situation. Who do you think we were focused on? On ourselves. We wanted to be smart, we wanted to be sneaky, we wanted to be a little bit courageous. That courageousness was dispelled very quickly, but that's what it felt like for a moment. And the focus was on us. The focus was not really on the other person. It was not really on the interest of the other person, helping that person, finding out what goes on in that person's life. It was completely on us. And that prevented us from coming up with the right solution. That prevented us from being open to that conversation, being open to the person in the corridor, and seeing what might happen. Now, when I think back over the last 20 years of being in the professional services industry, I realized that there are many, many moments when I'm in a client meeting, when I'm in any situation, and I feel afraid, I don't know what to say, or I don't know what to do. And I've also realized that these are the moments that are important moments. They are key moments in our career and in our lives, and these moments need to go right. They really need to go well, these moments, because typically these are tipping points. They are moments on which a lot of things hinge. So the last shift that I would like you to take away is the willingness to take a risk. To step out of being safe, step out of being comfortable, and be willing to take a risk with what you're taking away from here. And that means that you go back to your organizations, you suggest something, you do something, you show up in a different way maybe, and you don't know what comes of it. That's the essence of a risk. Doesn't mean you're doing anything stupid, anything callous, anything different, but you take a risk. And that is the boldest action you can take. It doesn't have to be anything extravagant, anything enormous, anything big. It is something where you don't know what happens. They are the key moments because they really allow you to improvise, to be fully present with the other person, with the outcome, and they are your best chance to drive something and to have influence. Now, about 6 weeks later, after the corridor incident, Andy and I found out about what he actually talked about in that meeting. We read it in the Star. And the article described that he talked to the 100 top executives of the company about the importance of taking a risk. Can you imagine how we felt there? He was about to take the company on a global expansion and wanted to take the company away from being completely German-focused and turn it into a global company. And Annie and I realized at that moment, we should have taken that risk, right? We should have said something in that moment because quite likely he may have been open to that. He may have really welcomed that, and who knows what would have happened there. We did have a chance to make up for it, fortunately. We met him again a year later at a conference where we were in the same setting again, similar setting, and we did go up to him, and we did have a beer in the end with him, which was absolutely fantastic, and we all had a good laugh about that incident. My encouragement to you is to shift the focus right away and show up back at work being ready to take that risk and bring a new solution to place. That's it, and I wish you all the best for that. Good luck, folks. Thank you.